Welcome back to the Elevate Your Running podcast. This is Coach Sarah, and this week I'm answering all of your training, racing, fueling questions. And I took a poll over Instagram and Threads over the last few weeks, and it was a lot of fun to get your questions. And there's some good ones in here. We're going to be talking a lot about fueling, low cost fueling, which I think is a really interesting concept because, if we're out there marathon training, we are consuming quite a bit of gels. So I've researched some really fun ideas on how to keep things a little bit more cost friendly. Some short and effective strength training routines, when you can run workouts outside in the cold and when you should take them inside on the treadmill, or maybe change up your running routine to a different day that could be warmer outside, how to manage training anxiety, and a few other questions. So I want to dive right in. We have 7 or 8 questions today. And it's going to be amazing. One of the things that I'm a big believer in is that if someone asks a question, there's probably other runners who are also thinking that same question. So these questions could be ones that you have thought about asking. They could be ones that you are journaling about and wondering how to overcome certain pieces to your training. And they could also be ones that you're going through right now that you might need advice on how to flow through. So the first question is, I do not have a lot of experience with taking gels. I took one gel during a half marathon that I ran last year. I usually run on an empty stomach and I like to get depleted. I think it helps me mentally in future races. Are there any advantages to this? So my answer is no. I think we're seeing in the running space this really big fueling boom. We're not just seeing the running boom, right? There is definitely a running boom happening, and it's really difficult to get into races. Some of the local races in Colorado are selling out months in advance. And I think that that's really cool. I think it's really, really cool for the sport. And in addition to this running boom that we're also having this fueling boom. If you've been following David Roche, who is an ultra endurance athlete, he's also a running coach. He's out there doing really amazing things, not only in his training, but also in 100-mile race distances. And he's talked all about very openly on his podcast, on his YouTube channel, about how fueling has kind of been his secret weapon. In addition to, he's been training for about 18 years, I think, consistently and stacking those bricks, but how the fueling is such a big component to his training in this cycle, and how he's fueling, how much he's taking in, when he's taking in nutrition before a run, during a run, how caffeine kind of plays a factor in all of it. And it's really, really interesting. So I think there are so many great benefits to gel well, gel often is what I call it, to my athletes that I coach. And let's train. Let's train our stomach. Let's train our bodies to get used to taking in those calories and taking in those carbohydrates. Practice it on your easy runs to start. And then, of course, starting to add it into the mix when you're running workouts. So you're running quite a bit faster maybe than race pace. And then also adding it into those long runs that have the quality in them. So maybe you're training for a half marathon or a marathon and you have some goal pace work in that long run. You'll want to incorporate those gels and nutrition into specifically that goal pace running, because it might not feel the same as when you're taking it in on easy days. I remember a long time ago when I was running half marathons and I was training in a very traditional way that I think most of us train for half marathons. I was running just a few days a week, and everything I listed in the half marathon episode a few weeks ago of 4 common half marathon mistakes, I have done every single one of them. And I remember specifically I was fueling with these Jelly Belly jelly beans that had electrolytes in them. Some of them had caffeine. They still make them. They're definitely not as popular as they were, about 8-10 years ago. I loved taking them on my runs, my long runs before running. But what I came to find out was that when I was trying to run a little bit faster in some of those runs, long runs, it was harder to take in the beans because they're tiny little jelly beans. And they would like fall all over the ground. And like the last thing you want to do is like stop to pick them up. So it was this aha moment for me as a runner a long time ago of like, I need to figure out different fueling because there's no way I can race and take in, I think at the time I was taking in one packet of those Jelly Belly jelly beans for an entire race, which at that time was, an hour and 39 minutes to 2 hours and 4 minutes, depending on where I was in my half marathon journey. And I think it's really interesting because you're taking in just one packet of fuel for 2 hours of sustained work. It's just not enough. Your energy demands are so much greater than that, especially when we go into the marathon distance. That is going to be one distance that is so unforgiving. There is absolutely no way that you can get through a marathon running well, running, quote unquote fast. So maybe your goal effort and staying happy and healthy in that whole process. So what fasted running does is that it can influence our hormone levels. So a lot of our cortisol levels are actually influenced by fasted running. And the higher our cortisol levels are, the more negative effects it has on muscle recovery and just our overall health. Now, cortisol is also a stress hormone. So if you are stressed in training and your cortisol is high and it stays really high, this is something that happened to me last spring when I was training for the Cherry Blossom 10 miler. You can't recover. It's really, really hard for your body to recover, even if you're sitting on the couch with your Normatec boots on and trying to do everything that you can do to recover. If your cortisol levels are too high, it's impossible to recover, which means you're going into the next run feeling trashy. And like that doesn't feel good. And then it's just this domino effect, right? Now, what we do when we fuel our body in training runs, workouts, and races is that we are fueling our glycogen stores. Now, what we heard from Jonah Rosner in episode 156 of the Elevate Your Running podcast is that we also want to refill our liver glycogen stores as well. And that's going to be in the morning of race day or in the morning of our workout. And so he goes into more detail on how to do this and what this looks like. And that's going to be in episode 156. But we want those glycogen stores filled to the max, just like you're filling your car with gasoline or recharging the battery up to, what is it, 80%, I think is the rule of thumb there. Maybe charging your phone, yeah, right? You want to charge your phone to 100%. So you want to charge or fill these glycogen stores as much as possible. So when you go into your long run, your workout, your race, you're feeling fantastic. You are ready to go. You're running on all cylinders and you have the energy and the glycogen to be able to go the distance for what you're trying to do. If you're in a depleted state, especially if it's in a long run or an intense run, which would be a race or a workout, your body might actually start breaking down the muscle tissue for energy. And this is so not what we want. We need that muscle. We want to preserve that muscle mass. As runners, it's hard to build muscle mass. So if we're in the gym doing a little bit of strength work, we obviously need to preserve that muscle mass, but we also don't want that to happen in an intense effort because a lot of, the end of the race is not going to be ideal. Now, if you're also running on an empty stomach, you might feel fluctuations in your blood sugar levels. You might feel dizzy. You might have lightheadedness or feel really fatigued, especially on those longer runs. So, I mean, how many of us, and I know this has happened to a lot of us, you go into a long run, you go into a race, and you already start to feel like hungry right at the start of a race, or you feel really tired. I've had both of those experiences, and it's not fun because you're asking your body to do something really incredible on this specific day, and you need it to be at 100% or as close to 100% as possible. So, fueling guidelines are roughly 80 grams of carbohydrates per hour. I always recommend for athletes going into, let's say in this example is a half marathon, taking maybe a caffeinated gel right before the start of the marathon, half marathon. So it kicks in later on in the race. And then I love taking a gel every 5K. It's something that I've trained my stomach on. It's something that is pretty easy to remember because you're running over a 5K timing mat, that's going to come out to be 3 or 4 gels plus one at the start. If you do that, I guarantee that as long as you don't start out too fast in the half marathon, you're going to feel really good at the end of the race. Question number 2, how can you fuel during marathon training without breaking the bank? What foods and drinks can replace gels without having to carry a grocery bag during runs? This is such a good question. Now, this is like the opposite end of the first question, right? Like now we're talking about how much fuel can I take in during marathon training runs? What can I take in without breaking the bank? Because we know if you're out there running a 20-mile long run, you could be taking in 80 grams of carbohydrates per hour. So that could be a little over 3 hours of running. It's a lot of gels. It's one of the things I struggle with the most in just the race. Like, where do I carry all my gels? How do I carry all my gels? You always want to have a backup gel with you on a race too. So, like, how to make that all work. I will say that Bandit makes the most incredible race crop tops that have all the pockets in them. And it was something that saved me. There were so many pockets in my race crop for Indianapolis that I couldn't even find one of my gels, one of my caffeinated gels. I had to like search pocket in the shorts. I'm like, it's not there. Pocket in the sports bra, the crop top, not there. And then I went to the second pocket and I finally found it. But that's like a great problem to have, right? So how can you fuel without breaking the bank? Well, I think it's important to buy in bulk if you can, right? So if you have a specific gel that you like, I know there are deals and sales online, specifically the Feed and Amazon are two awesome places. And I think too, local sports running stores also offer sales of like, if you buy X number, you get X number free, something like that. But I would definitely buy in bulk if you can, especially if you know it's something that you love and that you like and your stomach can tolerate. You could buy it on sale or, having an internet find. But then if you're really looking for more of that low cost, what are like the low cost gels out there? I would say starting with mixes, which is a bit unique. I know some people have raced on mixes and have raced extremely well. The Morton mix is $4 for a packet. Now it's 80 grams of carbohydrates and 320 calories. So if you're taking in one of those mixes an hour, that is roughly $12 for a 3 hour long run versus, the Spring Energy gels were one of the most expensive gels on the market. And at the time I was using it, before we knew everything that we know now, Morton gel is very similar that I joke that it's like my discretionary weekend fund because those gels are almost $5 per gel, but they're only, 20 to 30 grams of carbs. So you might need 2 of them per hour. So maybe you're taking 6 or 7 with you on a long run. And that just starts to add up, especially if you're running long every single weekend, which you probably are to some extent if you're in training. So I think the Morton mixes are great. I've personally tried the Morton mix pre-marathon, the day before the Indianapolis Marathon. It was one of the ways that I carbo fueled with 80 grams of carbohydrates. And I would definitely try it before you go for a run because it has a unique texture and taste, but some people really like it. And they have a caffeinated, non-caffeinated version, which is also really cool. Now, GU also makes a mix, and it's the GU Roctane mix. And I know this is one that David Roche takes. This is also quite a bit lower in price per serving. So it's $2.25 per serving with 60 grams of carbohydrates. So that's looking at roughly $3.25 per hour. So that's probably going to be one of the easiest ways if you're taking in the Roctane mix. Now, I would double check that they have caffeinated, non-caffeinated versions because you don't want to be taking the caffeinated version for 3 hours straight. Something I noticed on the feed is that a lot of these gels and electrolytes are HSA and FSA eligible. And that's pretty huge because if you make that contribution into your HSA or FSA account and then you spend that money, you are saving it with like tax savings. So that's like another added little bonus. I know the feed and I think Fuel Goods also have some sort of loyalty program where if you sign up, you get X dollars a month or every quarter to spend, and that can help too. Now, one of the gels that I like to use in training right now is the Honey Stinger gel. That's $1.75 per gel, 24 grams of carbohydrates. So you'll want 3-ish of these gels per hour. They are very tasty. I really like the gold one. So if you're using 2 to 3 per hour, kind of depending on where you land there with gels and how fast you're running, that could be anywhere from, quick math, 350 to 470, 350 to 525 per hour that you're spending. So if you kind of break it down that way, I think it's a good way to kind of assess where your budget is, what you're willing to spend. Maybe try all these things before going into a long run effort so you know your stomach is happy with it. And then also just seeing what works for you. And maybe it's a mix and match. Now, there are a lot of electrolyte mixes out there. Scratch makes a great one that contain calories and carbohydrates, and you could consider that an extra gel while also getting in the electrolytes that you need for not just your long run, but to also race really strong, especially in that marathon distance. The electrolyte balance is so crucial. It's huge. If you lose too many electrolytes or you sweat too much in the 26.2 miles, it's going to be a really hard effort at the very end of the race or whenever that kicks in for you, depending on the temperatures. And something else that some athletes have tried before in the past is consuming like dried fruit or pretzels or making energy bites. And you could keep them in like a little baggie, stick them in your pocket. With dried fruit, you just want to be careful because it does contain fiber. And if you have too much fiber on a run, you might be making some bathroom stops. But pretzels are really great. I have known a runner who would bake potatoes and cut them up and eat potatoes on her run because she had such a sensitive stomach that she couldn't really overcome that. But I think if you can lean into any of these options, you're going to be setting yourself up for success. I know some of the more popular gels, like the precision gels, they're pretty expensive, $3, $4 per gel. The SAS Beta Fuel gel is also a great gel. And that's not one listed on my list in front of me here. But wow, it is one that I incorporate into my daily, weekly kind of gel routine. And I want to say it's about $2 a gel. And you're getting 160 calories with 80 grams of carbohydrates. It's a bigger gel, so you just have to be cautious of that. It's a bigger gel that you're going to have to carry in your pocket. And then the carbs gel. The carbs gel, it's literally called carbs. And it has 50 grams of carbohydrates in it. And it's $2 a gel on the feed, which is incredible. And you're getting 50 grams of carbohydrates with 200 calories. So that's also another really great gel to lean into and maybe try as you get into training. And good luck. I'd love to hear what works for you and what you found to be successful. The third question is I'm struggling to add strength training into the weekly training routine. Currently, I'm running 5 days a week. Are there any quick workouts you recommend that could be added after a run twice a week? Well, congratulations for running 5 days a week, especially if you are training for something. We all know that you're probably tired, especially with all of other life's responsibilities and things to do. And if you have a family and you commute into work and all the things, right? One of the most important things to remember is to keep the easy days easy and the hard days hard. So if we're focusing on 2 strength training days, I highly recommend that if you are looking at your training plan, if there are 2 days that you are training a little bit harder, so there's a bigger intensity, maybe it's a day with strides, or you have a very specific workout, or you have like a long run, those would all be qualified as harder days. Now, if you're running 5 days a week and all those days are easy, which is absolutely fine, you might be in the base phase of training, you would want to sprinkle in your strength training days throughout the week so they're not back to back with each other. So maybe a Wednesday, Saturday, a Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday, something like that, Thursday, Monday, that can definitely make it worth your while. So I think one of the important things to remember about strength training is that it doesn't have to be an hour or two twice a week or an hour twice a week. It really can be 20, 30 minutes, and you can get so much goodness out of that. One of the things to remember is to really stay focused. If you are strength training for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, I know when I'm strength training specifically on Wednesdays, if I'm answering texts and emails and Instagram DMs in between strength training, all of a sudden my strength training time is multiplied. Like it just takes so long to get through everything. But if you can stay focused, maintain good form, and flow through the exercises, I think you can do and accomplish quite a bit in 20 or 30 minutes. You'll want to start with mobility. If you are someone who hasn't been in the gym lifting heavy weights or lifting any weights, you want to start with mobility and work your way into strength training. So mobility could look like 2 days a week. And it could be with a resistance band, glute bridges, clamshells, monster walks, leg overs, hip circles, dead bugs. Oh my, that's actually my mobility routine right there. You could do that, 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps, kind of depending on where you are and when you start to fatigue. Once you feel like you've mastered that and you feel strong, I would keep that in your routine to some extent. So maybe it falls at the beginning or the end of the week or midweek, but on a different day that your strength training lands. So now we're adding in a bit more, but if we can add it and sprinkle it into the schedule, sometimes it's a lot easier to manage it versus doing it all at once. So you start with mobility, you master mobility. It's twice a week. It's taking about 15 minutes. You're feeling really good. You're walking out of the gym feeling better than you walked in. You could even do it at night while you're watching TV or listening to an audiobook, but you feel better afterwards. You could start to add strength training in. Now you could start with body weight movements and then add small weight increments to this set. And this is 5 exercises that I think are the best 5 for runners who are starting with strength and who are short on time. And this is just my advice. I like squats. So you could do body weight squats or add weight to the squats. And that could be dumbbells, a bar on your back, a kettlebell, turn it into goblet squats. Walking lunges are awesome. Now you can do this as body weight to start and then add in some light weights that you're holding to your side. Lateral lunges are awesome. Again, start with body weight, really focus on a good form. And then once you've mastered that, you can add a weight to those lateral lunges. You could even pop the knee up to the leg that's over to the side. You're leaning into it. And then you pop back up. You can have that leg raise up and raise the knee up to the face area and then release. I like single leg deadlifts. I think these are great. Get good, strong form with single leg deadlifts before adding any sort of weight. I think the weight with single leg deadlifts is always pretty light because you want to make sure that your hips are even, they're level to the ground, and you're not wobbly, you're not falling over. The single leg movements are crucial for runners, and this one is by far my favorite. And then the last exercise is calf raises. You can start with both feet, no weight. And then you can add a light weight. And then you could add a heavier weight still with both feet. But then you could progress into single leg calf raises. And once you find success there, you can then add weight to the single leg calf raises. So it's all this progression that can lead you through training. So those are my top 5 strength training moves. And I would add them in twice a week once you've mastered mobility, but still try and keep mobility in there because mobility helps so much, especially when we're running 5 days a week. Question number 4 is when to run outside in the winter and running workouts when the temps are so cold. Okay. Well, thanks for this question. I think I got a few people asking about when should I run outside when the temperature is in single digits or it's just so cold? So let's break this down. If you're running easy, like zone 2 aerobic running, I think you can run outside really any time out of the year, but you really want to dress in layers and invest in warm winter running gear and feel warm. Now, warming up inside before you head outside, there are a lot of layers. They're all very warm. Obviously, if it's snowing or icy, that's going to be your gauge to, whether you run inside or outside. But let's just say the roads are clear, but it's about 10 degrees. Layer up and be prepared to, those first few miles are always going to feel really cold. And then if you're layered and dressed appropriately, you should warm up a bit. Some people will warm up quite a bit. Some people will just warm up a little bit, but you don't want to be cold the entire run because that doesn't feel good. And it's not great for our muscles or for our body or really for our mind. But I think if you have a running workout and it's cold, let's say it's under 20 degrees, 20 degrees for running workouts is always the threshold for me as an athlete and as a coach. So I coach in-person groups, and this winter we've had to cancel quite a bit because I wasn't comfortable with the team running workouts in single digits or teens, because when the temperature is under 20 degrees, our blood is working so hard to keep our body warm that it's not being applied to our muscles like it would be in any other sort of weather situation above 20 degrees. So our muscles are having a really hard time working. And if they're having a hard time working, it's going to be harder to get to that pace or to that interval that you want to get. So if you're working, let's say you have a 10K interval, but it feels like you're running 5K effort just to hit that pace, your body only knows the effort. So you're overrunning the workout. There's such a big risk of getting injured when you do it this way. So if you are going outside to run a workout, it's under 20 degrees, maybe switch that workout to effort and run only on effort. There's absolutely no paces involved. Maybe you even cover the watch. Maybe you need to cover the watch because it's under 20 degrees and you're going to be cold. But you really want to make sure that you're not doing any significant damage by running fast outside. Now, it's also important to remember if you are going outside to run a workout and it's cold outside, you might need a longer warm up. So if you usually warm up for 2 miles, maybe think about 3 miles or 30 minutes. You might need to add in more strides before you start your workout, which means if you run 4, maybe you run 6, but take the first 2 or 3 quite a bit lighter to let your body warm up as much as it can. So you're not going from 0 to 180 into those strides, because that is also a great way to get injured. But I think easy running, as long as you feel comfortable dressing in layers and investing in that really warm gear, you can go out there and have fun with it as much as you can. And hey, if you're someone who's like, I really dislike running in the cold, which every single year it feels like it gets a little bit worse for me, where I'm like, I'm running inside today. I see you, I feel you, and treadmill running still counts as running. And you can still log those treadmill miles. And what I love about treadmill miles is that you can wear like your favorite summer outfit and just rock out, because usually it's like hot in that room, or you get really warm running on the treadmill. And it can be really cool for heat acclimation too, if that's something that you need or want in your training. Question number 5 is, what is one piece of running advice you wish you knew when you started? I love this question. Thinking back to everything I did wrong when I started running, I think the one piece of advice that, like, if I could do one thing over, it would be to slow down my runs. And I think that's also kind of difficult because there is this difference between running running as like a daily workout and training, as in training for a race. I think those two are very, very different. Like my sister runs, and she runs it like she's working out for that 45, 50 minutes. So she's pushing the effort. her heart rate's really high. She wants to get in that really hard run. And then she might take 2 days off and then run again, or she might run the next day, but then run really hard. But because her schedule and her running schedule is so inconsistent, because it's deemed more like this is my movement for the day, and tomorrow I might cycle or take a Peloton class or just lift in the gym. And it's up to her discretion every single day, she can push that running hard. And that was something I did, but I did it quite a bit in my first marathon training build. And that's a really tough place to be because I was training. So when you're running and taking these running intervals as, or this running time, this running session as a workout, that's one thing. But when you're training, you absolutely have to slow down. And that's going to be the one thing I wish I knew when I started, is that it's okay to slow down. That your easy effort really does need to be conversational, comfortable, controlled. It really does get to be 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes slower than your marathon race pace. Yes, that is true. And if you look at it in that scope, it's totally okay. Slow down. I think I would have saved myself a lot of injury if I had slowed down in oh gosh, in 2017, 2016, I had quadricep tendonitis. Not great. It took me out for about 6 months. It's the tendon that lines the top of your knee, connects to your quadricep muscle, and that was inflamed. And any sort of movement was just like fuel on the flame. And I think slowing down and really reducing that intensity in a lot of my movement would have helped maybe not even get to that place. But slowing down really does help your body recover. It really helps build that aerobic foundation that we really need as endurance runners. And it allows you to train without getting injured, or a reduced injury rate. And it really also helps with the mental side of things. If you're going really, really hard all the time, chances are you're going to mentally or physically burn out. It's just a matter of like which one happens first. So I would definitely slow down, take those easy days easy, take those recovery days even easier, and throw away out the paces. I think that, recovery running, easy running is really more of a feeling. It's not a pace. And if you can have a lot of variety in your training, so some days you're running, let's say 10 minutes per mile. Some days you're running 940. Maybe your long runs are closer to 925, 930. Your workouts are obviously coming in a lot faster, but maybe like a really, really tired or recovery day that you're having is like 10 to 10:10, 10:20. There's a whole range of paces in there in a week. That's kind of what you're looking for. So slowing down helps in that aspect. Because typically what I see when runners aren't slowing down and they're running everything too fast is that they're running everything the same pace. So all along the board of your training week, you're running 840, 840, 840, 840. And maybe let's say your marathon pace is 750 or 8. That's too fast and it's way too much intensity. And chances are you're going to either get injured or have that mental burnout. So in episode 119, I list out 5 things that I would do differently if I was starting over as a runner. And that was a really fun episode to record. And I'm pretty sure slowing down was at the top of the list for that one. Question number 6. I have a lot of training anxiety. How do I overcome it? Ooh, this is a good question. I would first ask yourself, where is the anxiety coming from? Like, are you feeling anxious in having a plan? Are you feeling anxious in the daily run? Are you feeling anxious in the workout? Or are you feeling anxious in racing? Because all of those questions or different components to running might take you down a different path on how to overcome it. But I think some of the things that I think are really important to remember, that if you feel anxiety coming up in training or in your workouts, is to trust your training. That's always first and foremost, like trust that what you're doing is moving the needle. We sign a silent contract as runners when we jump into training and signing up for a race and establishing goals with that race that we don't know that we're signing at the time. And that means that oftentimes we're signing up for those hard days, those days that don't feel good, those days where we question everything, those days that we feel like, are we even making progress? But what I know is that if we're consistent and we're showing up and you just trust the training and you're just doing the best that you can in that day, whatever that is for you, because it's going to be different for all of us, at some point you're going to flow through that. I would definitely review your training log and highlight all the wins. One of the reasons why I love elevated moments and elevated wins is to build confidence in runners, because oftentimes we get down on ourselves, but if we're constantly reminding us of all the good that we're doing in training and all the wins that we're creating and the training PRs and the track PRs and the mileage PRs and maybe the attitude PRs, it builds a lot of momentum. And when you have confidence built with momentum, you're going to have a breakthrough because they go hand in hand. If the confidence falls, the motivation is going to fall. And that also goes hand in hand. So review your training log, see the things that have worked, like look at the things that you've done that you're like, wow, I can't believe I did this. Younger me would have never thought I could do this, or I can't believe I did this workout. I slept really poorly the night before, but wow, I still showed up and I made it happen. And I think if you're feeling anxious around workouts, and I hear this a lot, I think if you approach workouts with more of a curious mindset and kind of remove the pressure that workouts can sometimes bring on to the athlete, it goes so much better. And it's something I've really embraced in my own training practice. Going into workouts with, I'm just going to be curious today about what I can do, and staying so dialed in like the one rep that you're in and getting through that rep and not thinking about all the other reps that you have to run and what paces they're supposed to be. Because if you can just stay present with that one rep, be curious, feel your body. How is your body feeling on the track? What feels good? What doesn't feel good? Assess that rep at the end and then decide, what do I want to do next? Do I want to follow the plan, or do I want to hold? Or do I want to run on effort? Do I want to cut this back? Do I want to change this completely? These were all things I did in my 5K build after Indianapolis, because I wasn't feeling great in workouts after like 2 weeks of workouts. And so I ran a lot on effort. I cut workouts shorter. Like if I had 5 by 1200 meters at 5K pace, I ran 5 by 800 meters at 5K effort, which was very different than 5K pace on that particular day. And if you can walk away and say, I did something today, and that is going to be the check mark, that is going to be the brick, and I'm stacking these bricks, and eventually this brick is going to build this castle that I want to be in and thrive in, you'll get there. And I think that that's it's a really, really cool experience once you get, of course, to the other side of it. So you can do so much in workouts. I think the other important piece to remember if you're feeling anxious about speed and running fast is that workouts are supposed to feel tough. And it's going to feel very different than your zone 2 running, which is the other days of the week of the recovery runnings. It's supposed to get your heart rate up. You're supposed to be breathing a little bit heavier. You should always leave a few reps left in the tank, 1 or 2 reps left, so you don't overrun it. You don't put yourself into a big hole or put yourself into a well. But a key component is remembering that anything faster than a marathon effort, or 5 out of 10 on the RPE scale, is considered speed work. So if you have to adjust, if you have to and want to run on effort, if you're going to say, I have this 5 by 1200 meters at 5K, no, I'm going to run 4 by 800 meters at 10K. That's changing the workout totally, right? But it is still providing quite a bit of benefit to you. So being flexible with those workouts, I think, can help some of those anxious feelings, because when there's flexibility, it means you have choices. And sometimes having that choice to do something different can alleviate the anxiety. One of the most, I think, strongest pieces to having a resilient mindset is reminding yourself that you're doing it. So sometimes I've seen anxious athletes, but they hit every single rep. They run beautiful workouts, they run beautiful long runs, they're consistent. And it's reminding yourself that you're doing it, right? Reminding yourself in the moment of, yes, I am this runner. Yes, I can do this. And sometimes saying that out loud, and that could be for every rep, every mile, every workout, the more you can positively reinforce that you're doing it and you're doing it well and you're doing it the way XYZ you want to do it, I think the easier it is going into the next thing that you are embracing it and that you are ready to go. So I'd love to also hear from you on, if you have anxiety in training, how do you overcome it? I'd love to hear your tips and what has helped you. Sometimes running with others is super beneficial because you can latch on to someone who maybe is running that same pace as you, but if you're running behind them, the workload for you is quite a bit lower and you can just hang on and get through the rep. And sometimes that's the win. Other times you might want to run solo. You might want to run on effort, run minutes versus track mileage, whatever works best for you. But I think it's really evaluating what is going to set you up for success. And maybe what's causing it also. The last question for today is, I'm thinking about hiring my first running coach, but I'm afraid that coaching is for elite or really fast runners. Oh my gosh. I hear this question or I hear this statement quite a bit. And this is one that as soon as I hear it, I think, that's not the way to think about it. But I can absolutely see why people would think that, right? I think it's really exciting if you're getting to a point in your training that you want to hire a coach to help produce the results that you're looking for, whether it's education around running or running stronger, running faster, learning more about how to pace and race and all the things, right? There's so many different things that we can learn from coaching. I think it's really exciting to be in that place. And there are so many coaches out there. There's so many services that are offered out there. So I feel like there's something out there for everyone. There's like free plans, there's paid plans, there's coaching services, there's levels of coaching services. There are so many personalities. You can work with a local coach, an online coach. You can work directly in person with a coach. There's so many options. And that's what's so cool, I think, about the industry and where we are. You could work with a running coach who it is their business. It's what they do day in and day out. You could work with a coach who does coaching like on the side. And it's really establishing that one, run coaching is for almost every type of runner. And I say almost because I'll get to maybe some points that I would recommend being ready for getting into coaching. But I think it's really cool that, the runner has to be ready for coaching. And there's so many coaches out there that it's like finding the right coach for you is huge. Just like finding the right nutritionist or dentist. I think it's really, really important to find someone that you mesh with and that you mesh with really well, that you trust, that you're going to listen to in moments of doubt or moments of frustration, but also someone that you feel comfortable going to if you have a question or if you need to bring something up or if something doesn't feel right. So I think it's really cool, especially for newer runners in the sport. I think newer runners are one of the best runners to coach in a sense of like, there's so much growth opportunity and there's so much goodness there. They almost like don't know what they're getting themselves into, not with the coaching side of things, but I often joke with the Boston Marathon that like I don't run it. I don't run it every year because I know too much. I know the course, I know too much. And the same could be true with marathons. It's like once you run your first marathon, it's like, ooh, you kind of know what it's about and how hard, it can get in the later miles. But the newer runners are really fun to coach because they're new to the sport. There's a lot of learning and growing that can happen, but they also have to really be thoughtful with their approach to building mileage and to incorporating workouts because they're just newer to the sport. So their body isn't as adapted to running X number of days or workouts or whatever, and really like building that in very thoughtfully and carefully. So I think there's also newer runners, awesome for coaching, absolutely awesome. I think the athletes who know that they do too much are also great for coaches. I kind of fall in this category. I think Nell does a pretty good job with my mileage because it was one of the most important things to me when I had a call with her a few years ago about what I wanted out of training. And I knew I wanted more mileage. And I knew that that was also such a great way to be a stronger racer. And it really does make me happy. And I do well on it. I think having a coach is really helpful because for athletes who want to do too much, they don't want to take the recovery week, they don't want, or they want to run all the miles, or they want to run too fast or have too much intensity throughout their week, having a coach is crucial because the coach is going to hold them back in the best way. The coach is going to be there to say, I don't think so. This is why. Let's experiment and try this for a few weeks and see how you feel. And it could also be those athletes who run too fast. And I know it's one of the things I talk about most every single week is in Final Surge typing, like, let's slow down. Let's take this easy day, 60 to 120 seconds, slower than marathon effort, like all of that. And I really have to, work with athletes on it because it's a whole mindset thing. But I think it's really cool for those athletes who know that they do too much to have a coach to kind of help guide them to get the most out of training without overdoing it, and feeling good and not getting injured or getting, burnt out. So I think the most important thing from the athlete side is that the athlete is open to coaching. They're open to feedback. They trust their coach because their coach at the end of the day has their best interests at heart. Like, I don't know a coach that's like, I don't want to give this athlete X because it's going to help them in their race. No, like coaches want to give their athletes everything that they can, to get that athlete in the best place possible. But I think, like many times I've talked about on the podcast, there's just so many different roads to get to the final destination. Each athlete that I coach has a different roadmap to get to their race. And I have quite a few people running Boston, Chicago. Those are the two off the top of my head. New York City half. That all those athletes, even though they're training for the same race, they don't have the same training, and their workouts are designed differently based on their strengths and their weaknesses, and their long runs are designed around their strengths and their weaknesses and what we need to work on, and really making and having that fine balance in training for each athlete. So I think it's really important that the athlete's willing to be open to coaching and coaching feedback, trusting their coach, and then viewing it as a relationship and not a service. It is a service, but there is also a human behind the coaching piece to it. And I think if there's strong communication skills on both sides, it's going to be a very positive relationship, because if there are strong communication skills, there most likely isn't something being swept under the rug or not discussed, or maybe there's some feelings coming up but they're not being addressed. So just being so open and honest is such a great approach, and it's only going to help the coach and the athlete become stronger over the course of their time together, which is really cool. In episode 63, I talked about 5 things to think about before hiring a running coach. So that is a great episode if you think about either hiring a coach for the first time, or maybe you're thinking about changing coaches. I know in one of the Q&As, I think it was in December, January of this 2024, 2025, I talk about like how to end a relationship with a coach and how to make that transition to a new coach, because I think there are some do's and don'ts there. And I think it's going to be great, whatever this athlete decides to do. If she wants to hire her first coach, maybe buy a training plan, whatever she or he ends up doing, it's going to be phenomenal because they're curious about growth. And anytime that we're curious about growth, that means we're willing to make a change and get uncomfortable. And when you do that, you often find breakthroughs in what you're looking to do. And that's really exciting. So thanks everyone for staying with me today. 7 questions all about running, training, racing, coaching, all the things. Now, if you are looking to maybe hire your first coach or up level your running for 2025, the Elevate team has one-on-one coaching spots open for spring and fall race season. We would love to help you get better and faster at this sport. Coach Amber has spots open. I may have 1 or 2 open, kind of depending on when you reach out and what happens, but we'd love to have you join our team. There is a 3rd coach joining the team here in the next few months, which I'm really excited to make that announcement on who it is and the type of athletes she's going to be serving and helping and collaborating with. Is going to be really amazing. You can find more information about our coaching packages at elevateyourrunning.com/virtual coaching, or you could email me at Sarah, SARA at elevateyourrunning.com. Thanks everyone for listening this week. I'm so excited for another week of running, training, podcasting, all the things. I hope you have a phenomenal week.